Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here today. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes. Thank you very much.
Suzel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry about that. Rick and I had to have a big conversation. So,
Okay.
good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's web seminar on the Burton Book Fund for the 2021-22 academic year. We're very excited to be launching next year's program, and it's right at 11 o'clock. We're going to wait just for a moment or two, give people a few more minutes to join, and then we will start today's web seminar. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 web seminar on the Burton Book Fund. This information is for campuses that are interested in participating in the Burton Book Fund for the upcoming academic year. The information in this webinar will also be useful for other professionals that work directly with current and former foster youth who are attending college in California. I'm really happy that all of you are able to attend today. We are looking forward to answering your questions and having another great year. So for the agenda today, we're going to talk about what the Burton Book Fund is, who is eligible, the grant process and timeline for this year, a few important things to keep in mind, and then we have a special guest for you, Cody Van Felden, who is a J-Bay youth advocate and a recipient of the Burton Book Fund this past school year. We will end the webinar with a question and answer portion. Our first presenter today will be Amy Lemley, who is the Executive Director here at J-Bay. She'll be giving you a little bit of background on our organization as well as the history of the program. Next will be me. I'm Suzal Shankalepere. I'm J-Bay's Office Manager and the Burton Book Fund Administrator. I'll be going over the specifics of the program with you, and we will end today with Cody Van Felden. Now for some technical things, today's PowerPoint and resources can be downloaded from the handout section on the control panel. To submit any questions, click on the questions panel, type your question and click send. I'll be sending out a recording of this webinar along with a copy of the slides and a link to the application for the Burton Book Fund after the webinar. So if you miss something, don't worry, I'm going to send you everything that you'll need after. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Amy.
Thank you, Suzal, very much. We just want to start by just saying a word about what we do at John Burton Advocates for Youth. You know, a lot of you are familiar with our work in the policy and advocacy arena. We do advocate for the passage of and implementation of state laws to improve the lives of youth who've been in foster care or homeless. We provide technical assistance and training. A lot of that is related to the implementation of bills that we support, as well as other kinds of technical assistance and training in the areas of education, health, and housing. And then we conduct research looking at a variety of issues to understand if policy changes that we work to enact are actually impacting young people in the manner they were intended to. One example of some research we recently conducted that's highly relevant for today's web seminar is a statewide youth survey on the cumulative impact of the pandemic on foster youth. And I want to raise that specific report because I want to thank many of you who are on today's web seminar. We forwarded you that survey. You shared it with the students and other young people you serve, and we had a tremendous response. We had 598 fully completed survey responses, and we really learned a lot about the cumulative impact of the pandemic, and we're using that information to advocate for a range of policies to support them and to support them during this difficult time. So we would not be able to do anything we do in each of these three areas without the partnership of those who are on today's web seminar. So thank you very, very much. Next slide, please. So what is the Burton Book Fund? So the Burton Book Fund, next slide, was founded because we really wanted, while we know public policy and technical assistance and training are very powerful interventions, we know young people also need help today. And so the Burton Book Fund is really our one organizational strategy that is serving young people today. You know, we're not a direct service organization. We do, again, advocacy, technical assistance and training and research, but we know that all of that takes time. It takes time to pass a law, it takes time to implement a law, and it takes time to do research to determine if it's had an effect. And so the purpose of the Burton Book Fund is to really offer current and former foster youth with direct financial support to help them offset the high costs of their course materials. We also want to encourage contact with campus support professionals, whether you are a Guardian Scholars representative, you work in EOPS. We know that the caring professionals on campus have a lot to offer young people. And we know that the more contact that young people come into with those individuals, the better they're going to do. So certainly it's direct financial assistance. It's also to really encourage that interaction. And then really just to supplement the important work that's happening on campuses in housing programs and by county child welfare agencies. So we know most of the individuals on today's web seminar are campus representatives, but we know there's a lot of other people who represent Teach P NMD programs, county child welfare agencies. They're trying to promote post-secondary education attainment among the young people they serve, and they know that this can be one additional resource to help achieve that goal. Next slide, please. So the Burton Book Fund, what are we trying to achieve for students? So one is, again, to increase that contact with campus support professionals, and that is really through that initial application, that determination of eligibility that the campus professional is doing with the individual student. Secondly, we're also trying to ensure that youth access all financial aid that they're eligible to receive. This was an aspect of the program that was added in maybe a handful of years ago, 2 years ago, when we learned that many of the young people who were receiving the Burton Book Fund were not completing the FAFSA. And so we want to have young people to receive all of the financial aid that they're eligible to receive. This is very consistent with the report that came out, almost a decade ago, that looked at the rate of Pell Grant receipt among foster youth. And across the board, young people were not receiving all of the financial aid they're eligible to receive. And so by completing that FAFSA, that is going to make them more likely to fully qualify for the financial aid. And we know there's a very strong relationship between receipt of financial aid and retention and degree completion. So collectively, all of us here today, that is the goal, is improve retention and degree completion. And we know that the Burton Book Fund is a small part of that, but we hope it can be a helpful part of your larger, the larger work you're doing. Next slide, please. So in terms of systems change, what are we trying to achieve? Again, increasing that contact between child welfare system and campuses, as well as engaging students and campuses to advocate to improve policies. We currently no longer have young people apply to the organization directly to receive the Burton Book Fund. We changed the process a little bit ago so that the direct communication is between the campus representative and the students. And that was based on a lot of feedback, really understanding that the people who know what students need really are best suited at the campus level. And so that being said, we have really drawn on recipients of the Burton Book Fund to advocate for the policy changes that we're trying to achieve here at John Burton Advocates for Youth. A good example right now is we're currently working with Senator Connie Leyva on a bill, Senate Bill 228, to expand access to the Next Up program. Currently, it's on 45 campuses, and she has introduced a bill that would allow an additional 1,000 young people to participate in the program. And there's no one who can speak to the power of campus support programs and the value of the services they provide more than the campus representatives, as well as the young people who receive that. So we very much don't want this program to be siloed. We want it to be integrated. We want the people who participate in it to also think about engaging in our policy change work. We want to get policy ideas from you as people who are working directly with students and directly in systems. We know that you have the best ideas. And so if things are going as intended and as we want them to, the Burton Book Fund is not a one-way exchange. The young people are receiving the support for textbooks, but they're also participating in the policy advocacy. We're also hearing from campus support programs about what we can do to improve programs, expand programs. And that's really where the best system change comes from, not from people on high who come up with ideas in a vacuum, but through a conversation that we have, across the whole continuum of participants. So enough about that. I'm now going to turn it over to Suzel, who's really going to get into the nuts and bolts of the Burton Book Fund for the 2021-22 academic year.
Thank you, Amy. All right, so here is the Burton Book Fund process for the upcoming year. Many of the campuses on this webinar today have participated in the Burton Book Fund before, so thanks for being here again. And for those that are brand new to the program, welcome. My name is Suzel Shankalebre, and I will be your central contact for the program. You'll see my email and phone number listed. Please don't be shy. I'm always available if you have any questions or concerns, but my hope is that I'll be able to answer all of your questions today. This year, we have allocated $200,000 for the Burton Book Fund, and with the award amount sent to $200 per eligible student, we'll be able to help participating campuses serve at least 1,000 students. Let's get started. So, what are the eligibility requirements for students to participate? The student applying must have been in foster care on or after their 13th birthday. They must be enrolled in 6 or more units for the upcoming semester or quarter, and they cannot be participating or eligible to participate in Next Up. Lastly, the student must have submitted a FAFSA or California DREAM Act application for the 2021-2022 school year. For that fourth requirement, it's really there, as Amy said, just to make sure that students are accessing all of the financial aid that is out there for them. So how do you verify if the student has done it? You can check web grants, you can ask the student for verification, of course, and you can also work with the financial aid office. They will typically have that information for you. Another one of the eligibility requirements is that they cannot be participating or eligible to participate in Next Up. If you aren't familiar with it, Next Up is a wonderful resource for many foster youth students, and they offer various support services, including funding for books. This is why students that are eligible for Next Up or are already participating are not eligible for our program. I've listed out all of the Next Up campuses here for you. This isn't to say that Next Up campuses can't participate in the Burton Book Fund. It just means that their pool of eligible students will be a bit smaller. To be eligible for the Next Step program, students must have been in foster care on or after the age of 16, and they must be under the age of 26 before the start of the academic year. They must be enrolled in 9 units, and they must meet the terms of EOPS Mutual Responsibility or the Student Education Plan. The Burton Book Fund is a great resource to help fill in those gaps at Next Step campuses. For example, if the student was in foster care on or after the age of 13, but they exited out before they were 16, then they're eligible, and so on. So let's go over a few examples. Everyone, meet Jess. Jess is 23. At first glance, Jess looks like a great candidate for the Burton Book Fund, but unfortunately, they're not eligible because they are not enrolled in that minimum of 6 units. Next up is Cece. Cece is 19, and although Cece meets many of the criteria, they exited foster care to a legal guardianship when they were 12, so they are unfortunately not eligible for the Burton Book Fund. Last is Nick. Nick is 27 years old, which right off the bat, we know that they are no longer eligible for Next Step. Looking at the rest of these list items, we know that Nick is eligible for the Burton Book Fund because they were in foster care at the age of 13, they're enrolled in more than 6 units, and they submitted their FAFSA. Way to go, Nick. You hit all the requirements. So here is the timeline for the upcoming year and some really important dates to keep in mind. As a reminder, I will be sending this out to you, so you don't need to hurriedly jot all this down now. If your school is interested in participating, the deadline for returning the application to JBay is end of day Friday, May 21st. If you need a little bit more time, please just reach out to me and let me know, but that will be the general application deadline. Once we have identified the campuses who are interested in participating, I will be sending out grant contracts on May 28th. This will include the amount that your school has been awarded, and they will be due back to me signed by June 25th. Once again, if you need a little bit more time to get it returned to me, please just let me know. The list of participating campuses will be published on the JBay website. And then the week of July 25th, we will begin mailing out the grant checks to the participating campuses. At this time, I will also be sending out another copy for you to have on hand of the participant or student eligibility requirements. Once your school receives the check, you're ready to go, and you can begin identifying eligible students and dispersing the funds. There won't be any mid-year forms due to JBay. There will be a grant report and survey that will be returned to us by May 23rd, 2022. So nothing really to worry about during the school year, although I will be checking with everyone just to see how it's going for you and if I can offer any support to you. For that grant report I mentioned, I will be providing a template to you closer to that May 23rd deadline. Our hope is that each campus will be able to utilize 100% of the grant funds, but if your school doesn't end up spending the entire amount, the unused funds will be due back to JBay no later than May 23rd, 2022. We won't be able to roll over the funds to the next year, so yes, if you're unable to spend your entire award amount, the balance will need to be returned to us. So, is the Burton Book Fund correct and the right thing for your school? Well, I sure hope so. In order to be successful in this program, you must be able to identify a legal entity at your institution who can accept the grant check, help you with managing the funds, and ensure that the funds make it into the hands of the eligible students. This legal entity will also be responsible for returning any unused funds back to JBay at the end of the school year. You also must have the capacity to do the outreach to students to ensure that they're aware of the program and they know how to utilize it. So, what purchases are eligible and what can students not buy with the fund? The Burton Book Fund can be used to purchase textbooks and any other items that are actually listed on the syllabus. For example, if a student is taking an art class, the Burton Book Fund can be used to purchase supplies that are listed on the syllabus, such as paint or brushes or clay, whatever that medium of the art is, as long as it's on the syllabus. So it's not necessarily just textbooks. Students are also able to use $50 of their total $200 award amount to purchase school supplies that aren't necessarily listed on the syllabus but are needed to be successful in their classes. This can include clickers, pencils, notebooks, binders, graph paper, things along those lines. On the other hand, the Burton Book Fund cannot be used to buy laptops, tablets, or any other large tech purchases. This also includes accessories for those large tech items, such as chargers or carrying cases. Students are also not able to use the funds to purchase food unless it's for a cooking class. And they're also not able to use the fund to purchase any school spirit items, such as sweatshirts or water bottles. Next, we're going to go over the process in a little more detail. Step 1. Identify a legal entity at your campus to receive the grant funds and submit your application. So this legal entity, they can be any organization on campus that has a tax ID number and is able to submit a W-9 to JBay. Last year, the legal entities ranged from the bookstore to the financial aid office to nonprofits that were connected to the school. Pretty much the only thing that cannot be the legal entity are individuals. Whichever legal entity is chosen, they must be able to sign the grant agreement and provide a W-9 to JBay no later than that application deadline of May 21st. I will be emailing out the agreements to each campus once we receive the applications with the determined award amount for your school. So, how does JBay determine the grant amounts for each campus? For campuses that participated during this last school year, our general rule of determining grant amounts will be directly based off of how much you spent. For example, in 2029, we granted Campus A $5,000 for the Burton Book Fund. When Campus A submitted their end-of-year grant report, they had spent $3,000 of their total award amount and returned a check to us for $2,000. Most likely, Campus A will be awarded a $3,000 grant for the new upcoming year. There are, of course, exceptions to this rule. If you had special circumstances that led to your school not spending the entire award, there will be a section on the application where you can include any information that will be helpful to JBay in determining the award amount for your school. You can also call me or email me to discuss as well. If your campus did not participate during this past school year, welcome. And on the application, please just let me know how much money you're requesting and confirmation that your campus has the necessary resources and capacity to successfully administer the fund. Since the program works as that one grant check system, there will be no way for us to reallocate unused funds to other campuses. And we really want to make sure that as many students as possible are able to receive financial help in purchasing their textbooks. Whether you have participated before or it's your first time, we're just asking that each campus be realistic of their capacity and only ask for an amount that you know you will be able to utilize so we can get as much money into the hands of students as possible. So the next step is that we will be sending out the grant agreements. So on May 28th, we will send out the grant agreement to all the schools that submitted an application. These grant agreements will detail how much your campus has been awarded. If you believe that your campus has the capacity to fulfill the terms of the grant agreement, please completely fill out, sign, and return the grant agreement no later than June 25th of this year. In order to successfully fill out the agreement, you'll need that completed W-9 for the legal entity that I mentioned earlier, as well as their full legal name and mailing address. This is really important so we can make sure that that check makes it to them and that they are able to successfully deposit it. You will also need to assign someone as the authorized grant representative. It's similar to the campus contact, who will be JBay's main point of contact throughout the school year, as well as for students who are interested in participating, that will be their contact for finding out more about the program. Next step, get your grant check. The week of July 25th, JBay will mail out the grant checks to the legal entity on campus. Your campus is ready to roll and begin to start dispersing funds as soon as you receive the check. As a reminder, you don't have to send JBay any student applications or invoices. In order to fulfill the terms of the grant agreement, you will need to ensure that each student who receives the Burton Book Fund is eligible, but there's no formalized application process for students. We hope that this will speed up the process on your end so students will have immediate access to the funds they need. Each grantee will be responsible for identifying and reaching out to potentially eligible students, going over the program requirements with the students to ensure they're eligible, handling all the payments and invoicing directly with the bookstore and the legal entity that is managing the grant money. And they will also need to keep track of the number of students who have received money from the grant, which will need to be included in that end-of-year grant report to JBay. You'll also want to ensure that no one student spends more than $200 for the entire school year. Step 5. Towards the end of the school year, JBay will be emailing out to everyone a simple grant report template that will include a short survey. This will be sent to the grant representatives closer to the end of the school year. The information you will need to successfully fill out this report will be the name of each student who received funding, the amount each student received, and then just a general confirmation that the student met all the participation eligibility requirements. The unused funds will need to also be due back to JBay at this time, if that's applicable to your school. So the following is mainly a recap. The Burton Book Fund has limited funding, so please, we just ask that you think carefully about the number of students who require assistance in purchasing their textbooks. The application deadline is May 21st, but please do reach out and let me know if you need a little bit of extra time in figuring out your legal entity. Students are able to use the award on textbooks, school supplies, and items listed as required course materials. Students in campus programs or the bookstore will be responsible for any charges outside of the $200 Burton Book Fund per student. The grantees must keep track of the students who have been awarded a portion of the grant funds and be able to provide their names and the total amount that each student spent to JBay in that grant report. Next steps. So the important thing we can all do is make sure that students know this program exists. They can't use it if they don't know it's there for them. On June 29th, I'm going to be publishing the list of campuses that have been awarded the Burton Book Fund on our campus. So if you know any students who are enrolled at any of the campuses, please let them know that the fund is available for them. I will be publishing it on the link on your screen, but I will also be sending it out via email once it's up on our website. Students should reach out directly to the campus grant representative to inquire about receiving the Burton Book Fund. They should not reach out to us. Next, I'd like to introduce Cody Van Velden, who is a JBay youth advocate and a Burton Book Fund recipient. Cody's going to spend a few minutes giving us a glimpse of the program from the other side. Let me... Cody. Cody, if you're able to unmute yourself. I apologize, everyone. I think we're having a technical difficulty.
Here we go.
Wonderful. Hi.
Sorry about that, everyone. So yeah, as Susan said, my name is Cody. I am a student at Sacramento State. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be here today. Spring 2021 was the first semester that I was able to benefit from the Burton Book Fund. During this semester, I had attended an event and participated in a drawing. The person would win a $100 gift card to the bookstore. I won the drawing, but due to complications, I didn't receive it, leading to my use and knowledge of the book fund. I participate in the Guardian Scholars Program for current or former foster youth, and this was how I found out about the book fund. The book fund was a very quick process and saved me quite a bit of money, considering one of my books cost almost $300, and I was taking a total of 4 classes. My Guardian Scholars Program reached out to the Burton Fund on my behalf. I later received an email notifying me that I had funds available. Attached to the email was general information, an agreement to sign, and instructions how to use it online. On my part, all I needed to do was sign the agreement through email, and I had access to the funds. At the time, I had already purchased all of my books, but I was able to get a refund for a book and rebuy it using the book fund. With the help of the Guardian Scholars, all I had to do was go to the bookstore with the unwrapped book and receipt, and I was able to use the funds. In my opinion, Guardian Scholars uses the best way to get this information out to students. They are always working on sending information about different advantages to help financially. They typically send out an email listing these different resources. The book fund was one of these resources, also notifying students when there were funds left over to encourage students to take advantage. In the future, I personally would prefer to continue going through the process online because it was quicker than meeting in person. For every student, the beginning of the semester is the most hectic, so meeting in person to various appointments can be exceedingly difficult. I also want to talk a little bit about my perspective as a student and how you as staff can help get the word out to ensure students are benefiting from this helpful opportunity. Being a participant in the Guardian Scholars Program, the staff is incredibly involved with the circumstances of their students. When I struggle financially, I let my program know and they do whatever they can to get me resources. As a student though, depending on what department you meet with, the level of involvement can vary. And this is where students feel a lack of knowledge for resources they may qualify for. Additionally, many students are afraid to ask for assistance. To give some examples, I personally wouldn't walk into the bookstore and ask them if they had resources to help pay for books. The bookstore also is not as connected to their students. If I walked into the bookstore, staff wouldn't ask me if I needed help financially, nor would they know what students are deeply in need. If I was not a participant of the Guardian Scholars Program, the next likeliest person I would ask for financial assistance would be a counselor or a teacher. For any faculty or program that doesn't directly receive the funds to assist students can still benefit from the knowledge, because at any time a student can confide in faculty about their personal circumstances. The faculty at Sac State made the whole process easy for me because I didn't have to frantically struggle going to different departments to find assistance. So I hope my experience is helpful and encouraging, and I thank you again for you guys taking the time to be here.
Thank you so much, Cody. I hope that was helpful for everyone listening today. I know with the pandemic, it made things a little bit more difficult, but when Cody shared with me her experiences this past year, I think that the best method, if you're kind of wondering the best way to let students know, is to really just send out emails to your students, and probably more than once, as I know sometimes emails fly past my eyes. And so just maintaining that constant communication with the students is just a great way to ensure that they know that it's there for them, and gives them a chance to be able to use it. So before we move on to the question and answer portion, I wanted to let you all know that JBay is currently developing an impact report regarding the Burton Book Fund. We're interested in interviewing 2 students and 1 campus representative about your experience with the Burton Book Fund and how it's positively impacted you. If you're interested in participating, please reach out to Ryan Kwong. I have his email here for you. Now we'll be happy to answer your questions. Please enter your questions by clicking the question and answer arrow, typing your question, and clicking send. I've also listed my email and phone number here once more for you all, so if you think of a question right after the webinar ends, please do reach out, and I will do my best to help you. Anyone has? All right.
Hi, Sizzle. This is Amy. While you're kind of looking at questions, I just want to repeat Ryan's email since the slide moved by a little quickly. It's just ryan@jbay.org. And Ryan is our intern who is heading up that impact report. And again, we would appreciate any participation. If you have students who'd like to be interviewed, or if you're a campus representative who is willing to help us with that. So it's just ryan@jbay.org.
Thank you, Amy. Excuse me. Thank you, Amy. All right, so first question I'm seeing: who typically receives the Burton Book Fund on college campuses, financial aid or the bookstore? Last year, right before the webinar, I kind of looked through all of the grant agreements from last year, and it really was evenly spread out. My suggestion, if possible, would be to send the money to the bookstore if possible. Then it just kind of cuts out a middleman. All you need to do is send the bookstore a list of the students who are eligible to use the fund, and then it's going to be a much smoother process. But there were schools that did have the check sent to financial aid last year, and it seemed to go well for them. So I think it is more just the best way for your particular school. Next up, whose responsibility is it to verify purchases? So I believe you mean just making sure that the purchases are eligible, correct? If that's the case, there's not necessarily a way to verify it. You would just want to make sure that the students are understanding of what they can and cannot buy. If the bookstore is not the legal entity that receives the check, you can also send the bookstore a list of the purchases that are eligible and the purchases that are ineligible. along with the list of students that have been approved, and then they'll be able to do it that way. If that does not answer your question enough, please do reach out to me via email or phone, and we can go over it further. Next up, is there possibly any language in the upcoming contract that can block a foundation from taking administrative fees from the book funds? Yes, so in the contract, there is some language that points out that 100% of the funds must be used directly to the students. I remember last year there was one campus that had reached out saying a foundation wanted to take an administrative fee, and I pointed that out to them, and I believe they ended up choosing a different legal entity in that instance. But there is direct language in the contract that stipulates that it must be 100% must be in the hands of students. Oh, I see one. This one looks a little bit older. There's a problem with audio. I hope you are able to hear now. I apologize, I'm just seeing that. All right. Let me see if there's any other. Has any other institution awarded this fund to former foster youth who are incarcerated? How's the process different? No one has brought that particular thing to my attention, but specifically because of the COVID-19 pandemic, last year and this year still, we are allowing, as long as the campuses themselves are okay with it, students can use the funds to purchase books online and have them mailed to them. So I believe that would be an option for if the youth was incarcerated. But if you have further questions about that, please reach out to me. Who do we address the check to when returning funds? And who do we address the envelope to when returning funds? For both of those, it would be to John Burton, Advocates for Youth. When I send out the email today, that includes a link to the presentation today. I'll also include our address again for anyone who may need it, but it is on our website. And I can
actually, Susan, can I chime in here?
Of course, yeah.
So we haven't reached the spending deadline for the 2021 fiscal year. So if you are a campus representative and you have unspent funds, our goal is for those funds to be fully spent. And so, if a young person has purchased books, you can refund them money for those books. If they need school supplies, you can purchase those school supplies. We just really encourage everyone to be as creative as possible to outreach to students in order to kind of get that money out to them. We know that many of them have lost their jobs over the last year due to the pandemic and have experienced a range of negative outcomes. So, what is the spending deadline, Suzel? I know it's coming up. It's like on the 20th or something.
Yeah, the grant reports and checks are due May 15th, but if you need a little bit more time, if you think that there's a possibility that you can spend down your entire award amount for the past year, please let me know. We would much rather the money go into the hands of students. Next question. For this academic year, is there a form to use to complete the report? Yes, there is. I sent it out a few weeks ago, but please send me an email and I can send it out to you again if you need it. I can also include a copy of it when I send out today's webinar presentation to everybody for any schools that may still need it for this year. The next question, San Jose State has participated in the past, but not last year. Is San Jose State considered a new participant this year? I would say yes. since you didn't participate last year, and I'm going to be mainly using the amounts that each school spent last year and determining their award amount this year. Since you didn't participate last year, please do include the information detailing how much money you're asking for, the confirmation that you're able to kind of follow along and complete the program with these new stipulations. So yes, thank you for asking. Where can I find the application? Our college used to participate. Well, welcome back. I'll be sending out a link to the application along with the recording of today's webinar. I'll also be posting the link to the application on our website as well. So it'll be in a couple different places for you. A couple slides back in my presentation, I showed where I would be posting the list of participating campuses on the JBay website. That same link is where there will also be a link to the application as well. Next question. If we work with foster care youth, can we not sign up for this individually, or does the college have to sign up for this first? Unfortunately, as the program is at this stage, the college does have to sign up for it first. So if you have students that are at a particular college that aren't participating, please reach out and let me know what that school is, and I can try to make contact and see if we can get them signed up for the Burton Book Fund. Even if they didn't attend today, I can send them all the information that they might need. I would love to get as many schools involved as possible. So thank you for bringing that up. That is a great one. Next question. My campus has participated in the Burton Book Fund before, but didn't participate last. Oh, yes, this is the same question. So yes, please submit as if you're brand new. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me. We can discuss your particular campus, your situation. So no problem there. Let's see if there's any other questions. Is it okay to give monetary versus bookstore credit? I believe if you're asking if it's okay to just directly give the students cash versus reaching out to the bookstore. So since the program works as a grant program, each school is allowed to implement the program in whatever way they see fit. As long as the students don't spend more than $200 each for the entire academic year, you can kind of implement the program however you like. Last year, I had given an example of buying gift cards to the bookstore. Like, there's different ways that you can implement it. It's really what works best for you as you coordinate with your legal entity. I kind of leave that in your hands, but we really do, I would say, the problem that can arise with giving students cash directly is that they may not use it for the books, and we really want to make sure that they're getting the help they need directly for their classes. Next questions. If the students are participating in EOPS, do they have to use EOPS funds first and then use the JBay funds? For this one, I would say that this is particular to your campus. If you get a significant award amount and you know with all of the eligible students that you have, you're able to award them all the Burton Book Fund, I would say it doesn't matter the order. You just really want to think if a student has another source to purchase their books and another student doesn't, I would suggest prioritizing the student that doesn't have any other source of funding for their books first, just to make sure that everyone gets a little bit of help that they need towards it. But there's no hard and fast rule. What are your requirements for confirming foster youth status? Is a student's word on the FAFSA application sufficient enough? I would say yes. You can also reach out to the financial aid department if you have any doubts or just want to get extra confirmation. You can also check on web grants. but in general, I would say that the student's word is sufficient. All right, I see someone's saying they're going to reach out. Looking forward to speaking with you soon. Thank you, Ashley. When it is time for the bookstore to return the unused JBay book funds back, yes, please make the check out to John Burton Advocates for Youth. And if you can just make sure that it's clear what school you're from. In case it is the bookstore, if it's a Barnes & Noble school, we just want to make sure I know exactly which school is sending the refund check.
Hi, Suzel. This is Amy. I just want to say one thing. You know, we've had some schools who said we want to kind of save half for the second semester. You know, you can obviously do what you want. You know, these funds are being granted to you, and as long as the young people meet the eligibility criteria, as Susan said, you can structure it as you want. That being said, my recommendation would be just spend the money, because some of the students who were there first semester aren't there the second semester. You know, the best intentions is partially why we're getting some of these refunds, where there's been a staffing change, the person didn't know about the program. $200 isn't what it used to be. It's not a lot of money, and most students can burn through that pretty quickly. So again, our goal is not to have any money refunded, but for it all to go out to young people. So if you want to reserve some for the second semester, do that. But we just, you know, another approach would be just to spend it and know it's gotten out there, it's reached young people and made a difference. So that's just kind of one point of view to share.
Thanks, Amy. For this next question, I'd love for you to chime in as well. If there are a few students who have a minimal amount left to spend on their voucher but do not need anything, is there a way for all of the balances to be consolidated to where the organization, in this instance, the Guardian Scholars Program, can utilize the funds towards buying school supplies for our students? Is this something that JBay can possibly explore?
That's allowable. $50 of the $200 per student is certainly allowable. And so if you have a student who needs that, it doesn't have to be you have to give the full $200. If they've spent $190, you've got a bunch of young people with $10 left, and we don't want that money back. Identify a student who needs that help and go ahead and provide that support to the young person.
Thank you. All right, I've gotten to the bottom of the questions. Does anybody have any additional questions? We still have a few minutes left. All right, well, if you do think of a question later on, please do reach out to me. I would love to talk with all of you further if you have any more questions. Thank you all so much for attending today. I'm really happy with the turnout. And please keep your eyes peeled on your email. In a couple hours, I will be sending out everything I've already discussed, including a recording of this presentation. So thank you all very much. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.